The Jewish nation is at war, and at this fateful time, we need to hear voices of truth and courage. The Machon Shilo YouTube channel is excited to present these discussions between the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim, and former prisoner of Zion, Jonathan Pollard.
We are faced today with the specter, the horror show, actually, of Kamala Harris. I will at this point admit that a year ago, had you said to me that the Democratic Party would actually promote this individual as a candidate for the presidency of the United States,
I wouldn't have believed it myself.
I did say to myself at the time that cannot possibly be. She's so clearly incompetent,
inadequate,
unintelligent, lacking in any of the qualities required for such a job, and so clearly flawed in every way. I would not have believed that they could have fobbed off the American public in such a way, and that some Americans would actually go for such a thing. But apparently, I was very naive, and anything is possible.
You underestimated the media, especially the Democratic.
Yes, indeed. And today we are faced with this horror show, and I believe you have some further revelations about her close advisors and associates.
Right. We've already discussed two of her appointments. One of them, is a certain Ilan Goldenberg, who she has appointed as her liaison to the American Jewish community and Israel. But he also sits, as you know, on the Sanctions Committee of the National Security Council. So, and he is a horror in and of himself. She has basically appointed now a fellow by the name of Philip Gordon as perhaps her next Secretary of State or head of her national security advisor, a rabid anti-Israeli, anti-Semite of the worst order. But following in that tradition, she's just recently appointed two new people that you kind of have to dig into the news to find, because the mainstream media isn't going to report this. A woman who has been appointed as the new Arab outreach appointee, Brenda Abdelal, her name is. She's Egyptian American. She has previously served as a Department of Homeland Security apparatchik. As I said, has been appointed as her new liaison to the Arab American community. And she is most infamous, I'll say it, for a statement that she made, quote, that Zionists are controlling American politics. And from there, she went on in the, finest tradition of anti-Semites to call us responsible for basically everything bad that's ever happened in the world. Her second appointment was even worse. It was the Reverend Jen Butler. She was appointed as the outreach appointee to what's called the faith community. And she is, amongst other things, a veteran Israeli critic. And she's also a very strong political supporter of a woman by the name of Linda Sarsour, who it's hard to describe her without exaggerating just how bad a human being she is. She's one of the worst anti-Semites, mainstream anti-Semites you could ever imagine. Arab American. And again, look at these two appointments. They're horrific. I mean, obviously, they're intended to shore up the what's called the uncommitted vote. And these are mostly woke, regressive, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel extreme leftists in the left-wing community and in the Arab or Muslim American community. Now, these are people, these people like Brenda Abdalal and Reverend Jen Butler and people like Ilan Goldenberg and people like Philip Gordon, who are very close friends of Harris. These are the people, these four people, for example, and there are others, but these four we know about, have really shaped her perspective on the American Jewish community as well as Israel. Now you say, well, there's the first gentleman, Doug Emhoff. Well, I think we can kind of write him off as somebody from central casting. I don't consider him a very strong Jew, having married, well, somebody who isn't Jewish. And it doesn't seem to bother him. And he worked for a law firm in Washington that represented the PLO and Qatar, which made him rather rich. Okay, so these last two, this Brenda Abdalal and Reverend Jen Butler, are just two more pieces of evidence, I would call it, in an indictment of who she is. She's not a friend of the Jewish community. And if you look at her, that's Kamala Harris. If you look at her voting records, if you look at her behavior, when she was in California politics, she's a hard leftist. I mean, there's just no other way of describing her. So these were the latest two.
How about communist, totalitarian, regressive, super woke? Would that cover it?
Yes, because if you look at her economic policy, well, unfortunately you're 100% right. You're not exaggerating anything. If you look at her economic policies, I mean, the Washington Post of all media establishments blasted her leftist naivete and said that, her economic policies will just bring ruin to the United States. And then it was like, well, turn the page and go on. I mean, that should have been full stop, but it isn't. So I think that, as I said before, we have to prepare for the possibility, not the inevitability, but the possibility of her being elected to the presidency. And that the two things we have to do is get on with the job of developing our self-sufficiency in military equipment and annihilating our enemies, not defeating them, but wiping them off the map. Because once she becomes president, as David Greenfield reported a few days ago, her administration will be an Obama administration on steroids. That's a pretty horrifying thing to think about, but it's a possibility. It's a possibility.
And that, of course, is assuming that the elections, in fact, take place as scheduled, that there is no pandemic, a further pandemic announced.
Well, that's why
and that there is not, once again, not for the first time, massive electoral fraud.
I think those are one of them. The issue of a pandemic is certainly there. It's on the table, but electoral fraud, absolutely, you can count on it. Texas just removed, in fact, over 1 million illegal voters from the voting rolls. 1 million who voted in the last election.
How did 1 million false, illegal individuals, people without the right to vote, how did they appear on the electoral rolls?
It's just, who knows? It just happened. Well, for those people that feel that illegal immigrants, for example, have the right to vote in American elections, well, there was nothing wrong with 1 million illegals voting in the last election, if that's in fact what happened.
Kamala Harris is on record in her own voice stating that entering the United States illegally is not a crime, that such a person should not be considered a criminal.
She considers the term illegal immigrant to be racist. So she uses the term undocumented alien, which, I don't know, it sounds like a synonym for illegal immigrant or illegal alien, but this is the left. This is newspeak.
So the word mill is spinning very fast.
Well, she is notorious for using what's called word salad. I think that's the pejorative term for what she says. I've listened to some of her speeches, and I think the only way you could possibly make any sense out of it is if you were either drunk or stoned, because, I mean, I don't know what she means. I don't know what she says. It's just a bunch of gobbledygook.
Nor does she. She is just mouthing certain well-crafted platitudes and turns of phrase that were written for her by speechwriters who are vastly more intelligent than she is.
Well, that's like saying a Cocker Spaniel is more intelligent than I don't know, a Doberman Pinscher. But the problem, I think, with her and the Democratic Party is, look, the Democrats understand what they're dealing with. They've repackaged her, okay. And what is her campaign about? Her campaign is about joy. Joy. And okay, I mean, that can go just so far. And I'm hoping that when voters go to the polls, that they use their head and not their heart, because there's nothing joyful at all in what she's proposing as the doctrine of her administration.
Why does that remind me of Aldous Huxley's Soma in Brave New World? Joy.
Because that's exactly what it is. I mean, these guys may be woke, but they seem to be fairly well read. And that's Soma, that's joy. That's exactly what it is. The only thing we're missing are the tube babies that are, emerge fully grown and programmed.
They're working on that as well.
And they're working on that as well. Yeah.
As well as rearranging everybody's DNA.
Well, if people are, I hate to use this word, stupid enough to get this poison injected into them, which is allegedly a vaccine, then I guess it's survival of the fittest, That's all it is.
Zal, that is to say, our sages of old, made the following statement: Misha en bo da'ath asul rahem alo. He who is totally lacking in understanding, you should not pity them. You should have no sympathy for those lacking the ability to question and think critically. Basically, that's what they were saying.
And there's no excuse for it, because there is enough information on the web for people who can read critically and actually understand what they're reading, to tell them everything they need to know about why they should avoid certain injections. Or in this case, vote for certain people. I wouldn't quite call her the mRNA equivalent, or the political equivalent of the mRNA vaccine, but it's pretty close to that. She is not what she's made out to be, just like the mRNA quote vaccine. She will do massive damage if elected, just like the so-called vaccine.
Let's replace Jonathan. Let's replace the term either vaccine or so-called vaccine with the precise, accurate, scientifically accurate term that I have mentioned on one other occasion, I believe, in our discussions. We are discussing a genetic transfection platform. That's what it is.
Yes.
Whereby foreign DNA is introduced into every cell in your body. Full stop. That's a medical, scientific fact,
correct.
and that is a precise definition. Now, because that is the precise and correct definition, the definition of the word vaccine was re-engineered 4 years ago, as you may recall.
Which I do.
Okay.